I just want to say that I think some of the estimations of urbanization in the coming decades and years and decades are actually they're, I think, conservative. They're underestimating how rapid this movement will be. And so even for India, I sometimes say, when the minister says, 50%, 600 million Indians will live in cities, I'm thinking, well, good if it's not 800 million, because with a population of 1.7 billion, by mid-century, it might be more than that. So frankly, these are unprecedented processes that our civilization has never seen before. And certainly onto your country, onto India, falls a significant share of that process and that movement. So let me just touch very quickly on 5 issues that have been mentioned by one of the speakers or another, and I just wanted to maybe highlight a couple of things in each that have not been mentioned. The minister and Eric have spoken about city planning and how important that is and how it needs to be professionalized. Absolutely. I think the one issue that we haven't touched upon, but maybe it'll come up during the debates and discussions over these days of the World Environment Day and in today's events as well, is the issue of footprint. Eric certainly brought it up in the example of Barcelona versus Atlanta. My home happens to be near Barcelona, so I actually absolutely second what he's talking about. But in India, these issues are even more prevalent, because think about it, Barcelona today is under 5 million people. Right? Delhi is 25. Yeah, Bombay is 25, 22, huh? Much more. Right. I don't even want to know the number. So the thing is that in India and in South Asia, and in Asia more generally, you have to start growing up. So think Japan and Korea as opposed to going wide. And it's not just an issue of preference. It is complicated, engineering-wise it's complicated, because there are seismic areas. North India is a seismically prone area, but frankly, if we want harmony between man and nature, human beings, sorry, and nature, I use man with a small m, not that, right. If we want that harmony, we need to give nature a chance. And the only way we're going to give nature a chance is by reducing the footprint. I mean, it always strikes me when I fly over Asia, and you fly at night and you're looking down and there are not many clouds, and you look at the lights, right, lighting up the surface, and you just don't see the end of the lights. You have to be concerned about how are we balancing, urbanization and nature. And I joke with my friends, but if we start giving names to tigers, we have a problem, right? So that's one issue. Now, city planning with a small footprint also has direct impact on India's challenge of making public resources available and private resources available to surmount all these challenges and build all this infrastructure. Because in a city that is half the radius of an alternative, the infrastructure costs 3 times less to build, right? And the services to citizens are provided much better, much quicker. I think that's exactly what Eric meant in his conversation about public transportation and metros, and you need to get to places. Well, if you need to travel 2 hours, that's one story for the economy. If you can get anywhere in 15, 20 minutes, because the footprint is small and because public transportation is available, or because you can take your bike and hopefully not choke yourself in the process of pedaling to your workplace, then you have a functional city that is operational. Circular economy is the second issue I wanted to touch upon. I mean, everybody spoke about waste management, everybody spoke about waste to energy, and etc. Certainly, I mean, these are all the same terms, no matter how we use them, but circular economy encompasses it a little bit more because it involves everything. It involves energy efficiency, it involves water efficiency, it involves paper, it involves plastic, it involves construction debris, it involves many other things, but the point is that we should aim to use as much of the secondary materials as we possibly can. And while we are talking today about you know, get rid of plastic. We know that as a civilization we cannot get rid of plastic, but what we can demand our private sector does, and our government promotes policies, is to have as little as possible of single-use plastic. In other words, we need to be able to recycle as much plastic as possible and reuse it either in road construction or in construction materials or back into plastics again or into some uses that we can't even foresee. But I was just with Eric, we were in Bombay after the beach cleaning exercise, and one of the supporters of that exercise is Adidas, the famous sporting goods company, and yeah, they're starting to recycle plastic into shoes and shoe soles, right? So that is kind of an innovative idea, and there are probably thousands others. By the way, those of you who know me, you know I'm an incredible promoter of, we need to launch in India a Jugaad 2.0 campaign. I think I signed up Dia while we were in Bombay. I know half of India hates the concept, but I believe you're missing the point. This is one of your strongest features as a society and as a community. You can innovate, you can create something out of nothing. You should be proud of it, not ashamed of it. But that's just me as a foreigner speaking. Yeah, you do? Thank you. So then, okay, help me with the advertising industry so we can actually start the campaign around Jugaad 2.0 and then make Indians proud about how they can create something out of nothing and innovate in a way where the world is constantly surprised. How did they do it so quickly and so cheaply? And, you know, did it twice as better as we did. I mean, that's actually something that a country should be proud of. On the issue of greening of cities, I think we're just at the cusp. It's not just about parks. I think we're at the cusp of seeing walls of buildings turning into solar energy panels. I think that technology is 10, maybe 15 years away. I think we're at the cusp of seeing all the roofs in cities being green. I think we're at the cusp of actually changing the color of our roads, because if they are black, that city with asphalt, that city is going to be hotter than if they are white, right? So I think there are innovative technologies and ideas that engineers and architects need to start bringing out, because cities need to be smart, not only, as Minister said correctly, with technology. They need to be smart also looking at how our ancestors lived. Right? And we were just yesterday in Andhra Pradesh speaking about agriculture. You know, 100 years we've been investing chemicals and all kinds of industrial solutions into agriculture, only now to turn around and say, well, actually our ancestors were pretty smart to grow food without chemicals, and actually you can improve yields and you can improve farmer benefits and you can improve farmer incomes and save the earth, thank you, and health, by actually doing it naturally without all this stuff being involved. So similarly in architecture, I think, Dia, you referred to how our ancestors built their homes sustainably from earth and other local materials, and they are incredible innovative solutions now in architecture and design that India needs to either develop or borrow and interpret, but you know, scale up and start using it in a much quicker way than we have to today. Fourth issue is resilience. Our cities need to be resilient. India, unfortunately, is in a place in the world where you're either going to have a flood, or you're going to have a drought, or you're going to have an earthquake, or you're going to have a storm and a tsunami. And so, with a lot of our economy increasingly being based around ports and water, or in areas prone to increasingly difficult disasters, of course, this needs to be built into the engineering and the technology of our urban centers, so that, and it's not that we need to reinvent the bicycle. The technologies and the approaches are there. You look at Korea, you look at Japan, you look at some other countries that have figured it out already. We need to borrow it, interpret it, you know, make an Indian version out of it, but frankly, there's a lot to work with already. And last but not least, and I know the minister is always chastising me for raising these issues, but I think he actually raised it himself: urban governance. Today, the movement for climate change and urbanization is actually led by hundreds of mayors around the world. And look, I know that India is evolving from a rural economy and a democratic society with a certain structure of its political forces, and this implies a somewhat, change and evolution in how both governance and the political system are structured. Because if you think of New York State, I mean, whoever thinks of Albany, right? Everybody thinks about New York City, because that's where the economy is. I mean, if you think of Maharashtra, right? Everybody thinks immediately of Bombay and, okay, somewhat, Pune. So the point is the concentration of the economy, taxation, budgets, urban governance and democracy are increasingly being urbanized. So without having, elected mayors that have a city assembly to govern them, and then a budget and an ability to levy taxes to support city development, it will be increasingly difficult for India to move on urbanization. And I know it's not an easy proposition. I know it doesn't happen overnight. But I think society needs to start asking itself these questions, that if we don't have an owner for our city, how are we going to move forward and satisfy the needs of our people? Interestingly enough, in countries much less democratic than India, the democratic movement is actually starting in urban places. And it's, I think, an emerging phenomena, because concentrations of people in a small footprint make them start demand things that you don't see them demanding in rural areas, because of the annoyance that pollution or waste or absence of waste management and garbage cause in urban environments. And because people are concentrated in that neighborhood, they say, come on, can't we do something about changing our little neighborhood? Which I think is what one of the speakers meant when, I think it was Eric, when he used the example of Rwanda, about how the president approached it and said, well, we're clean in our apartments and in our homes, why can't we be clean and comfortable in our neighborhoods? And I think that's the extension that people are making, but it brings together with it democratic trends where city authorities are opening websites for people to complain and report abuse, when the pressure on authorities, on elected officials, becomes such that they have to become transparent and accountable in cities. Otherwise, cities develop into a mess and into a story that is then very difficult to reverse. Let me stop here and wish you all a great conversation today and in the coming 2 days. We are very grateful, I think, as the UN to India for hosting World Environment Day this year. And it's certainly, for those of you that participated in events before, it's a different type of World Environment Day. It's certainly not just a one-day social networking thing. It's a whole campaign that's running in India and increasingly in the world by goodwill ambassadors like Dia and others. And it will be running for several weeks. We will be announcing interesting partnerships with private sector and the UN and governments in the coming days, so stay tuned. But I'm really proud that the country that I serve in right now, India, is taking a stand on this and moving forward. Thank you very much.